Toastmaster and I failed to I'm a Toastmaster and I failed to do number one in Toastmasters, which is asking our presenter for an introduction. So I am going to wing it, if you don't mind, Ronnie. Ronnie Reynolds served as a member of the Austin City Council from 91 to 97. He was born in Austin and is a fifth generation Austinite. I don't know that I've ever heard that word before. He attended the University of Texas at Austin, where he majored in accounting and graduated with a BBA in 1969. He spent 2 years in Houston working at a CPA before deciding to return home to Austin. Here, he and his wife, Mary, raised their 2 children, Nancy Michelle and Ronald Jr., and he started his own accounting firm. And in 1979, he entered in a partnership with John Lawson Reynolds, was very active in the Austin community, and has held a number of leadership roles in local organizations, AKA Rotary. So many accolades from Rotary International. So please put your hands together for the one and only Ronnie Reynolds.
Well, thank you, Ava, and I appreciate that. I have been doing it for a couple of years, and I really do enjoy the training sessions that I'm able to do, not just with Rotary, but with other groups, because I think I'm not smart enough to teach in college, but I may be smart enough to teach accounting to non-accountants. And quite frankly, I enjoy that because I think it's the most value that I can give to people that, and sometimes are scared to death. Now, I presume that we have on the call some, we have treasurers, but we may have some presidents of their clubs as well. I see Max there. He looks way too more comfortable than for this particular presentation. So I'll try to liven him up a little bit. And I see Kevin there, and he's been on it before. But and I apologize. I've got my screen here, and then I've got another screen here that's a little bit bigger. And as I'm older, I need to be able to see a little bit larger. In fact, I'm going to try to even make it even larger. Oh yeah, now I can see all of y'all. As a CPA, I do a lot of nonprofit work. We probably do about 135 nonprofits right now. And so I think we have a little bit of knowledge as it relates to what's necessary. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to present a presentation to you. As you'll notice, I want to answer all your questions. There may be some questions that come up later. Last time there were a number of questions that came up afterwards, and people emailed me, and I answered them hopefully correctly. And so I'll be glad to do that as well. We have a small enough group that if somebody has something, if you'll just, I can see, I think everybody, or well, the ones that have their pictures, I can see their names. If you want to just raise your hand, I'll stop and answer a particular question. We'll take questions at the end as well. And likewise, obviously, we can use the chat. And then, Ava, if you can try to monitor that. And if there's something that comes up, I'd appreciate that.
I'll take care of it.
You bet. Okay, we're going to, when I make this a type of presentation like this when it's presidents, I try to tell the presidents, I give you about a 10,000 foot view, because that's not your job. Your job is to be the president, not the treasurer. But the treasurer is a little bit more different. They've got the detail, and they have to get into the weeds a little bit. So if you're a president watching this, just understand that this is what you want your treasurer to do. And then if you're a treasurer watching this, hopefully you can get something out of it, and we can, it'll be beneficial to all concerned. First of all, we're going to talk a little bit about those things that'll keep you out of trouble. First of all, I'm talking about the frequently asked questions as it relates to the IRS. And I like to do things in questions and answers, because if you ask the question to yourself and then you get the answer, most of the time you're going to retain it. In fact, quite frankly, if you had asked that question yourself and I had given you an answer, you'd have had about 80 to 90% retention. If I just give you the information, your retention is about 35 to 40 or 50%, because if it's important to you, you ask the question, you turn around and you get the answer. And so for that reason, I've tried to do it such that if just kind of read the question to yourself, and then let's go answer it. First of all, is our club exempt from income taxes? And if appropriate, under what code section? Well, we know we're exempt, but it's important for you to know that your club is exempt under a 501c4 organization. What does that mean? That means that you're a benevolent organization. All the Rotary clubs are 501c4. Now, are there any times when the club is required to pay income taxes? Oh, well, think about that for a second. Anytime are you required to pay income taxes? We're going to come back to that in a minute. What is the difference in a sponsorship and advertising? Okay. I will somewhat answer that in the fact that a sponsorship means that you're going to allow a person to give their name, their address, and maybe a link on any type of paper, magazine, whatever it might be. But if for some reason you allow them also to advertise or to promote or to market, for example, ABC Pest Control, if that's all it says, that's a sponsorship. If it says ABC Pest Control, the best pest control in Harlingen, Texas, that's advertising. Why is there a difference? Or why are we concerned about there being a difference? Well, we're concerned because a sponsorship is not subject to income tax. Advertising is subject to income tax. And there's a bunch of calculations that you would have to go through as it relates to advertising. I won't get into the details of that right now unless y'all come back and want some specific questions. Are donations made to our club tax deductible as a charitable contribution? Okay, your club is a 501c4 organization. Therefore, payments made to that club are not a charitable contribution. Even if you do a fundraiser for a charitable activity and the money comes to the club, the person writes a check to the club, that is a 501c4 payment, and therefore it is not a charitable contribution. They did not make that contribution to a 501c3 organization, which goes to answer the next question. In what cases can payments be allowed? I'm not quite to that. I'm a little ahead of myself. In what cases can payments?
Ronnie,
yes.
Can I ask you something? I'm sorry. Are we supposed to be seeing your slides because we are not seeing your slides?
You are supposed to be seeing my slides, and I thought that's what she said that they worked.
Okay, so Amy, are you there? Can you help us? That might be what.
Yes, you just need to reshare your screen again. Share your screen one more time.
So click down at the bottom of the share screen. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, that should do it right there.
Oh, there it is.
Yeah, there it goes.
Here it comes.
I am sorry.
Yay.
I'm sorry.
Yay.
I
Okay.
noticed I saw my picture on the screen. I said, oh, shucks, we need to see something besides that.
Thank you.
Okay, so based upon that, and let me see if I can. Okay, and those of you that would like these slides, if you will just email me, I will be glad to send them to you. So you'll see here my email address, and I will send it to you, and also my telephone number. And in the past, y'all have emailed and called me as well. Those were the questions that we started out with as it relates to that you're a 501c4 organization, that you sometimes could be required to pay income taxes, especially if you have advertising, and your donations payments made to you are not a charitable deduction. Now, in fact, I'm going to stop right there before I go to the rest of the questions. Some of you have a foundation, probably 50% of you have a foundation. And if you have a foundation, then that is a 501c3 organization. And a 501c3 organization's payments made to it are charitable contributions. Now, when we get to the question and answers, I know we're going to have some questions and answers, and I want to come back to it as it relates to the difference between a C3 and a C4, and how you need to make sure, number one, that there's some separation, and number two, be very cautious about the payments or the movement of funds from one entity to the other. Movement of funds from the C4 to the C3 is really not a problem. But moving funds from a C3 to a C4, you better document for what purpose that you're doing that. Because remember, a person got a charitable deduction for the C3, but they could not get a deduction for the C4, and IRS is not interested in people getting a charitable deduction in return for a payment to a C4 of which they could not have gotten a charitable deduction. So that's the reason why we talk about C3 and C4. Remember again, C3 is your foundation, C4 is your Rotary Club. Okay, in what cases can payments to our club be deductible as a business expense? IRS really doesn't like this, but Section 162 of the code states that any ordinary necessary business expense, right, meaning an expense incurred to make money, can be deducted. So you need to talk to your CPA or whoever's doing your tax return and make sure that what you're doing by paying your dues and being a part of the Rotary Club is a business expense. And therefore, for example, if you've gotten a number of Rotary members as clients or business associates or things of this sort, that would be a good example of this is the reason why you're a member of the Rotary Club. It is your outreach, not only outreach to be a benevolent organization, but it's your outreach to enhance your own business. And we can talk more about that later. It is, IRS really does not like it, but from a technical standpoint, any money expended to make money or for the potential of making money is a legitimate expense. Let's talk about tax returns. Is our club required to file a tax return with IRS? And if so, when is it due? Well, obviously, well, I shouldn't say obviously. Please know that you are required to file a tax return. Every time I make a presentation, I don't think I did it. I don't think it happened last year. I think y'all were all in great shape. But I also present at Lone Star Pets and do it some other places. And inevitably, I will have a person come up to me and say, you know, I don't know that we filed a tax return. And how do we rectify that? And quite frankly, that is important. If you do not file a tax return for 3 years, you lose your exemption. If you lose your exemption, you have to completely reapply for exempt status, and it's kind of expensive and time consuming. And so you do not want to lose your exempt status. All of you should be, as a Rotary Club, you are exempt because of Rotary International, because Rotary International went and got a group exemption number. And those of you that are doing your own tax return on your 990, you'll see that there's a place to show your group exemption number, and that group exemption number is 538. Now, that being said, we'll come back to it in a minute with specific questions. Just know that, yes, you're required to file a tax return. And so, well, you know, we've got a small club and we only raise 30 or 40, we only spend 30 or 40 or $50,000. What kind of form do we have to file? Well, that's the easy form. That's not even, I shouldn't say easy. That is the postcard form. It's one page. You do it online, you do it electronically. It's called a 990N. All you have to do is say that your total receipts were less than $50,000 and sign it, your federal ID number. You go online to do it, and it takes you probably 30 minutes at the most. If your gross receipts are between $50,000 and $200,000, you have to file a 990EZ. Now that's a little bit more difficult. It's a paper form. You can file that paper form electronically. In fact, now you're required to file that return electronically IRS has gone to, for this particular year, they've gone to all electronic filing, but it's still a requirement that, and it's probably 15, 20 pages long. If you have gross receipts over $200,000, you're going to have to file the long form 990N, and that is substantial in reporting. Now, I said a number, I did not say net income was over $50,000. I said gross receipts. Yes, Ellen?
Yes. What was the number on the very first one? Because I have it down as N.
Okay, it's on line 7 right there at the bottom. You'll see there under $50,000.
Okay, but what was the number on it? It was 990 what?
N as in Nancy.
And this one that you're talking about now, over 200,000.
It's going to be a 990 EZ.
Okay, that's the 50 to 200,000, right?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, now what is the one over 200,000?
That's just a 990.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
You
Sorry,
bet.
I missed something.
You bet. Let me see if I can expand my. Let's see here. Come here. Come on. I want to be able to see. Nope, that's all I can see right now. So maybe you'll have to help me because I can't see all of the. Yeah, I can't see all of the players. All right. And let me also get my computer screen back here. Now, the reason I said gross receipts, let's say you go do a fundraiser and your fundraiser raises $60,000, but you had expenses of $10,000 or $20,000. And so therefore you just netted $30,000 or $40,000. You're in the 50,000 to 200,000. It's gross receipts. It's not net income. Okay. Are there any other forms to file with IRS? How many of you, think about that, how many of you have paid somebody for goods and services for more than $600? If you did that, then you have to file a 1099 NEC. Used to be called just 1099. This year it's changed to 1099 NEC. What happens if you have staff? Then you have to file payroll tax returns. What happens if you are collecting money for activities, and depending upon the state requirements, that also has sales tax related to it? You might have to file sales tax return. Not if you're paying the sales tax. I'm talking about your purchasing thing. I'm saying if you're selling something that you have to turn around and collect sales tax on, then you might have to fill out a sales tax report. There's some exceptions to that, but just please understand you're not completely exempt from filing sales tax returns. Okay, before I go to the Rotary stuff, the 990 is important. I've already told you that the Rotary International is your group exemption number. When is that tax return due? That tax return due is due the 15th day of the 5th month after the year end. Well, all the Rotary clubs year end is June 30th. So that tax return is due November 15th. So if you're a treasurer, a new treasurer, you're going to be responsible for filing a tax return for activity that you may not have been a part of. And it's going to come due on November the 15th. Now you can get an extension And you can get a 6-month extension if you want to. If you don't get it done by November 15th, please get an extension. Failure to get an extension carries with it, depending on the size of your organization, a $25 or $100 per day penalty. So file that return and file it on time. Now, your 501c3 or your foundation has the same requirements, but it may not have the same year end. Most likely it has a June 30th year end, but if it doesn't, that's the reason why I gave you the rules. The rule is that the tax return is due the 15th day of the 5th month after the year end. One step further, the 501c3 and the 501c4 really need to have separate boards. They should be somewhat independent. Okay, let's go on now to the, if I can.
Ronnie, we have a question.
You bet.
It says, who signs the tax return, the club president or the club treasurer?
Good question.
Good question. And the answer is it's a club officer. The problem that you have is, and we have some people that will have them do it, and I don't think it's a problem because the past president may become the president the next year. And the current president may become a past president and still considered an officer. And so therefore, sometimes that president likes to have the person that was responsible for it during their year sign it. But normally the requirement is that it is an officer. Good question. I had another thought process hit me and it just went away as it relates to when it's due, November 15th, who signs it? You sign it late. Oh, if you have taxable income, you will have to fill out another form called 990T. And that's to report the income subject to tax. There is an exemption of $1,000, and so you may not have to pay any tax, but you still may have to file the 990T tax return. Just giving you the returns that you have to file. Remember, you've got to file a 990 of some form, either 990N, 990EZ, or full 990. And if you have any income that's subject to income tax, then you'll have to file a 990T. In summary, the easiest way to explain the 990T or unrelated business income, that's what's on the 990T, is if you have a activity that's regularly carried on, that's not a part of your exempt function, and it might be considered in competition with the for-profit world, that will be subject to income tax. And I'll repeat that later on if somebody asks. Likewise, the sales tax and 990T, well, it'll come back to me in a minute. The question I'm sure will come up. Okay, let's go to payments to Rotary International. And I apologize, we are just as busy as we can be over here. The deadline for all individual returns is normally April the 15th. If you know that Texas got extension to June 15th because we're in the disaster area, the declared disaster area. The problem is IRS has not acknowledged that yet. And so therefore they're still operating on the April 15th. That's true, except that on the Congress or the IRS changed the April 15th to May 17th for everybody in the United States. That's great. So they're now the IRS is now operating on May 17th. But in Texas, we were allowed to go till June the 15th to file any return that was due during that period of time. So long story short, we're still in the June 15th deadline, but and we also had all those May 15th normal tax returns. I'm sorry, I'm speaking out of turn. If you had a calendar year nonprofit, remember we do a lot of nonprofits, the calendar year nonprofit was due May 15th, unless you did an extension. So long story short, we've been so busy. So that's my excuse. And I normally get this information for you. So part of your homework is to know how much are your fees that you pay to Rotary International. Now, you pay a per capita dues, that's a per person. You pay for the Rotarian, which is the newsletter that comes out. Every couple of years, you pay for the Council on Legislation. And sometimes there can be an additional assessment. Question is, how are they calculated? Well, obviously they're calculated by the number of members, a dollar amount times the number of members. When are these dues due? They are due within 30 days after the year end, or excuse me, after the beginning of the year. So your July 1st, they're due July 31st. Now there's a grace period, I believe, until August, but they're determined based upon your membership as of July the 1st. And it's based upon the membership that Rotary International has. So that's important. It used to be that we had 30 days and 60 days to clean up our rolls and only pay for those people that we knew were coming back. You need to make sure that you have cleaned up your rolls with Rotary International by June the 30th. Otherwise, you will be billed, whether that person is living or dead or has moved away, you're going to pay for that number. And I have not seen an exception to that yet. So please clean up your rolls by the June 30th so that you do not have to pay more than what's necessary. You also have to make payments to the, oh, I'm sorry, backing up. When is it due? I'm pausing because I want to make sure that you put the question in your head. Those dues are due every 6 months for your dues. The Council of Legislation and the well, let me see if I can back this dude up. The Rotarian, I believe that you pay just one time, and the Council on Legislation just pay one time, but the per capita dues you pay every 6 months. That means come around January the 1st, they're going to look at your rolls on January the 1st, and that is the amount that you're going to have to pay. So please clean your rolls up before those dates. You also make payments to your district. And I will let your district tell you how much those dues are, when those dues are due. Question: who decides the amount of the dues coming from district? Ava, who decides that? I'll say you don't have you're not on mute. I want to hear, who decides that?
Jerry. I'm sure that there's a budgeting committee that makes that decision, a district budgeting committee.
For our district, I was going to say for our district.
Thank you, Jerry.
The district governor-elect develops a budget, runs it by the finance committee, and then it's presented to the president's-elect to vote on. And in that is the dues.
Thank you very much, Jerry.
By the way, this year, they're the same as they've been for the last several years, $34 a person.
Thank you very much, Jerry.
Well, and that's a number that, and when is it due, Jerry?
We will bill on July the 1st.
And when is it due?
as soon as it's built.
Well,
We have some that are a little slow in paying, but yes, it's
I
due in
understand.
July.
okay, what I wanted to come out of this was that the person or persons who set the dues structure are the president-elects. It may go to committee, it may go support, wherever it is, and usually that president-elects, they will make that determination and it'll be presented to them at Pets, in your case, Lone Star Pets. If y'all, all of y'all are in Lone Star Pets, aren't you? Okay. It'd be at Lone Star Pets. And why is it in Lone Star Pets? Because that is at least 30 days before the, I'm sorry. The district governor and or the committee must give that information to all the clubs of what they would like the dues to be 30 days before the vote. And the vote is usually at Pets. And the reason for that is if the presidents do not vote for that, then for the due structure, whatever due structure you want to change it to, then you have the opportunity for those people that have a district conference, you have the opportunity for another vote later on before the end of the year. Point I'm trying to make is the president-elects, the presidents for this next year, set the dues for the district, and it's their responsibility.
Thank you.
You bet.
And Ronnie, I want to say, this is Demetrius, why that is so important to the district and to those club president-elects is because it's based on the number of members that you have. That budget is vital because it may be structured for 50 members and you have not cleaned up your roll and roster, as you said, and they only have 35, then that significantly affects and impacts the budget.
Absolutely. Speaking of budgets, let's talk a little bit about budgets, but let's not talk about the district budget. And that's a completely different subject matter. We're going to talk about why does your club prepare a budget? I'm going to stop here and see if I can get a little participation. Why do we think that because we have a small enough group here, why do we think that we're going to prepare a budget? What's the purpose of a budget?
Tell our money where to go.
I'm sorry, to find out where your money goes? Okay, Max, what about you?
For your officers. So that's going to determine how you're going to spend your money and where you're going to spend the money. There's certain things you have to spend money on, like your dues and things like that. And then there's discretionary money in terms of your service projects. How much you're going to spend locally on service projects, how much you have available to spend on international projects, if you're going to do matching grants and that sort of thing. So it's a guideline for your club, and it's the officers in that your committee that's going to make that determination.
Very good. I think your point about the guidelines is a really good point. I like to explain it visually in the fact that you set the budget and you have your budget of revenue and you have your expenses, and it's like a cone. And so the budget holds you together and staying focused on where your revenue and your expenses are. And then at the bottom of that cone is your results. And so that's what I like to say, that the board is going to set this, I'll get to it in a minute. The budget is going to be the parameters from which to work so that you can accomplish the goals and the projects and goals that you want to do. So the budget is very critical to giving structure instead of just going hilly-milly, collecting money and spending money wherever you want to do it. It's almost like you have no purpose. So let's talk about this. And I will guarantee you, of all the clubs that are on this call, there's probably 5, 6, or 7 different ways in which it's done. So because of that, I'd like for y'all to tell us, okay, first of all, who prepares your budget?
The
You
treasurer,
want them to answer in the chat or you want them just to call out, Ronnie?
I was going to call out, that's fine.
Okay, go ahead.
I was gonna say, the person who prepares it would be the treasurer plus any committee members that he might have. And then the president has to approve it or disapprove it.
So it's first done by, in your group, it's first done by who?
I don't have a group yet. Not a fair question.
By your, okay, but I mean, your Rotary Club, a group gets together and does it, the treasurer does it, or the president does it?
The treasurer and the president work together.
Good, that's fine. Anybody else do it a little bit differently?
That's kind of how we do it. You know, the president pretty much works together with the treasurer to decide what they want to accomplish, and then it goes before the board, and it's kind of you know, ultimately approved by the board that this is, you know, how we want to go this year.
Okay. Anybody else want to interject? I mean, this is Amy, you're the trainer. You're supposed to. Amy said she didn't want to be treasurer, but I'm going to make her at least answer a question or two.
In Kevin's club, but in other organizations that I do things with, we look at what our previous expenses were, ask those committee chairs what they need and what needs to be spent and for what reasons, like justifiable, and then we can present that for consideration.
Okay.
Are you saying, Ronnie, it's different in every club or there is a specific way it should be done?
Well, there's no specific way. In a minute, I'm going to give you what I call best practices. And so we're going to go through some best practices, but all clubs do it a little bit differently. And also it's based upon the skill set of the people, and it's
Right.
the size of the club and the number of times that the people have done that. Many times, you know, you may have had a treasurer for a good number of years and they can just kind of put it together based upon what they've done in the past and go forward. I do not recommend that you have a treasurer for more than 5 years, preferably
Good
more
point.
than 3 years.
Good
And I know that's difficult because not everybody wants to do it, but you really need to have a change in the person that's controlling the purse strings. So that's just another little pet peeve of mine. But we'll talk about some best practices. But I wanted you to understand that when I do this presentation at Lone Star Pets, or one similar to it, you'll have people all over the chart as to where they do it. Who starts with the process? I'll give you some best practices in a minute, but that's just my suggestions. Every club has got, remember the club is independent. Rotary International doesn't even tell you how to do it. They may want to tell you kind of how to do it, but every club is independent. You're affiliated with Rotary International, but you are an independent club and you do what you want to do. Your charter has to be in compliance with Rotary International, but some of the things that you do and the way you do it, that's up to you. Okay. Who approves your budget? This is the one will be, and some of y'all were talking about it, but, and I can't see everybody, but maybe Ava can.
I can.
How many of you have your budget is approved only by the president and the treasurer? Anybody?
Nobody's raised
Okay.
their hand.
All right. How many of your budget is approved by the board and only by the board?
No,
Max.
is that
I
right,
see
Kevin?
Max is
Well-
raising his hand.
Charles says yes. Kevin says yes.
Yes,
Robert, Roger says yes.
How many people have the budget
Mindy says
approved
yes. Sorry.
by the board, and then it goes to the membership for final approval?
So for us, it's the membership is, can have the input, but they don't get the final approval.
Okay. Sometimes the membership will even have the final approval.
So nobody is raising their hand at this particular time.
Okay. All right. I'm just, in times past, all three of those were examples of way in which people had their budget was approved.
From Mindy, sorry, from Mary in
Can you mute that
Palestine,
person?
membership gets final approval in Palestine. That's from Mary.
Membership gets
Thank you,
final
Mary.
approval. Okay. And
Thank you, Mary.
that's good as well. I mean, quite frankly, when you get membership to get final approval, they got buy-in, and then they're going to work to make things happen. So that's good. You'll see how I try to at least bring the membership into the discussion at the appropriate time. Okay, who monitors that you're staying within the budget?
The board.
The board usually will do the monitoring. That's the board responsibility.
Board.
That's their fiduciary responsibility. The board makes sure that they're staying within budget.
Robert is saying in Lake Conroe that the board does have the final approval.
Okay.
And Charles made an interesting comment. He said he was surprised that the standard bylaws, and I'm assuming the Rotary International ones, do not include a requirement of setting a budget.
I'm sorry, was that a question or a statement?
I think it was a statement. I was surprised that the standard bylaws do not include a requirement of setting a budget.
Well, that's true. And in an organization, you have your incorporating papers, if you incorporated, or formation papers. You have your bylaws, which don't need to be changed all the time. And then you have what's called policies and procedures. And the policies and procedures can be changed at any particular time, and they're so much easier, whereas bylaws, sometimes your bylaws changes may have to go to your full membership, whereas your policies and procedures can be changed at any time by your board members. And that just kind of gives you the hierarchy of how it's organized. And Rotary International, you're correct. They can say you have a budget, you don't have a budget. Well, what are they going to do about it? They can't do anything with it because you're independent. So that's thank whoever said that, because it reaffirms what I've been trying to say. Okay, are you required? Now this is a good one. Are you required to stay within budget?
Required by whom?
The club itself, when the club approves a budget, is the club required to stay within budget? Or can you incur expenses in excess of the budget? What happens if you do? And do you amend the budget? How and when? So those are, people deal with budgets in different ways. Some
Max
people
says
deal with it
budget
on a
is
line item, and some people deal it with on a total. So help me with that. Tell me where y'all do.
So my
Budget is-
understanding is the
Max
budget can be
says
amended.
budget is a guideline, not rigid. Mary says only with board approval.
So I would chime in here too. We like to stay within the budget, but it's not a rigid, it's not a guideline. If we need to go out of it, then there has to be board approval. Sometimes depending on the thing, we may take it to the membership, but the majority of the time it'll be based on board approval. We do not update the budget line. We show an overage, and then at the next year when we're reviewing our budget, we may adjust it for the following year if it's necessary.
Okay, who else? The reason I want you to give in, I want your input is because everybody does it a little bit differently. There's no right or wrong answer. There can be some areas that you might want to improve, but everybody does it a particular way based upon their club and their culture.
You might set a guideline, for example, let's say something goes over by $50 or whatever, no need to make a big board issue out of it. But if it goes over that, then maybe it becomes a board decision. That would be one approach.
we can move money from one line item to another line item and sort of get balance it out that way. And we can also move money from another account because we don't, when we make the budget, we don't use all of the money that we have in our bank account. It's included in the budget. We always have a reserve.
As a treasurer, why is, first of all, there needs to be a policy. The policy needs to be written down. Because you as treasurer need to be protected. You're as treasurer, you need to be protected. You're writing the checks. If you're going over budget and you've got a policy and procedure that says if you go over budget, you'll have people coming to you and saying, why did you go over budget? Why did you let the club go over budget? Why do we have a deficit? So the policies and procedures are important. And the monitoring of the activity as compared to the budget is important as well. So you as treasurers need to be protected. One of the ways in which you may have is that if some people, like Max was talking about, that you have the ability to move money from one line item to another, but you don't have the ability to move it from one program to another. Because you may have a detailed budget on a fundraiser and you've got entertainment at $5,000 and location at 3,000, and it turns out to be the opposite of 3 and 5, but it's still within the $8,000 that you budgeted, and so be it. Other groups may say, no, we told you not to spend more than this, or we told you to spend more than that when we approved the budget. So you as a treasurer need to have the club or the board at least to approve the policies and procedures of whether when you stay within the budget or if you go outside the budget, what do you do? Sometimes people say in the audit world, anything over 10% outside the budget needs to be explained. Sometimes people will say, hey, the treasurer will bring okay, we're 10% or 50, we're going to be over budget here, and I need to have an amendment to the budget. So, and here's the reason why, so that you can stay within the budget. I don't recommend changing the budget. That's my pet peeve, but it's not necessary. There's groups that do it. I'm a part of some nonprofit groups that do it as well. All I'm saying is, as treasurer, protect yourself, follow the policies and procedures of your club. And if the policies are that you stay within the line items, then or you have to notify the board that something is taking place. And many times as treasurer, when you're making your financial presentation, you need to explain every time something. I think that you need to explain when you're outside of budget at least 10%. Anyway, protect yourself. I'm not in favor of amending budgets, but I'm a part of groups that do amend budgets. And if they do amend the budget, they'll only amend it once, and that's usually at the 6-month level. Okay, I'm going to go through an example of a good budget process and kind of explain why I think this is good, but everybody's different. That's the reason why I wanted everybody to present what they do. Everybody has a way in which to do it, and there's no right or wrong answer. I hate CPAs or accountants say, well, financial statements have to look this way and your budget has to be this way. Your budget is a tool, as your financial statements are a tool for you to help make management decisions and make sure that you're staying within the guidelines that you want to accomplish. It's got to be a tool that's useful for the board and the people that are reading it. It doesn't need just to look good to a CPA. That being said, let's go forward. The treasurer develops a draft budget based on prior year's information, anticipated current year information, and committee chair recommendations, and any strategic planning documents. And it would include all the backup. After the treasurer, because the treasurer is the person who probably has most of that information at hand. Then he or she may give it to the president, then reviews the draft budget and makes suggestions based on his or her plan for the year. Now, I have left out of here a finance committee, but the finance committee could be the ones that do the first draft, or it might come in later on. Then the president reviews the draft budget and makes suggestions based on his or her plans for the year. They want to have their input because they want to know what they got projects that they want to do. Then the treasurer updates the draft budget with the president's suggestions for a meeting with the board of directors. Here's another example. Instead of meeting with the board of directors, if it's now going back to the finance committee, that's no problem with that as well. But I guess the main thing is the treasurer has most of the information. He or she has historical information. And so therefore you need to have something to start with. They start with that. Then you have the president that wants their goals and objectives accomplished. And so they have involvement as well. Then the treasurer reprints a new budget. And then the president and treasurer present the draft budget to the board of directors. Here again, this could go to the finance committee, but eventually it's going to have to go to the board of directors. I believe in full participation by the board of directors. And then the president explains his or her priorities and answers questions. Remember, because this is the president's budget, it's the club budget, but it's also the president's budget. And then most importantly down here, the treasurer answers the questions as to history and probability of success. Make sure that you got a treasurer's in line with your president and vice versa, but you sure don't want them to be out of line. So the president wants to do this and treasurer says, well, we've tried this for 3 years in a row and it didn't work. Why is it going to work this time? But on the other hand, the treasurer probably has more historical knowledge as it relates to the finances as the president, but it's important for the treasurer to answer the questions as to the history and the probability of success. Then after any adjustments, the budget is approved by the board of directors. Many of y'all, that's how y'all do it. If the club bylaws state the budget must be approved by the membership, it's taken to them for a vote. But this is what I like. If membership approval is not required, it's still good policy to present the budget to the full membership for full disclosures. You'll be surprised how many people say, why are we spending, I don't know anything there. Why are we spending money here? Why are we doing that? Well, if the treasurer, after the board has approved it, will make sure that this budget is published or at least given to the full board, so the full board knows where you're going. After the budget is approved, it's then given back to the treasurer to include in the monthly financial statements. And why is it included in the monthly financial statements? Because that's the way that the treasurer can document to the board whether you're on target or not on target. Now, what I have done here is, this is just it's a very simple way in which to do a financial statements. Most of the time you're going to be on a cash basis. And so you're going to have your income and you're going to break it down into your dues, meals, initiation fees, assessments, and any interest income. That's your total income. You may have it for the first, that's a way in which to do the budget, and you may have your budget, and then you'll have your prior year or your current year to date. Remember, you're going to be doing this budget about 8 or 9 months into the year. So you need to know what the financial statement says for 8 or 9 months into the year. And then the treasurer might also put the previous year as in a line item. So you've got some good backup. So you got a year's worth of information a year ago, you got the most current 8 or 9 months of this year, and then you got the budget. And then you put your expenses, and you got your meals, your room rental, your dues, and your increase and decrease in your main operations. Now, I haven't included now, but I've now set up a separate budget for my club service. And that's my fundraisers. And then the expenses for my fundraisers. Here again, the three different columns. There's nothing magic to this, and I'm not trying to tell you how to do it. If you do it a different way, that's fine. This is just a very, very simple way to do that. And that is the presentation in about an hour. And we've got time for specific questions as it relates to charitable activities, 501c3 activities, raffles, whatever question that you've had from a financial standpoint or from a treasurer standpoint that you're concerned about.
Ronnie, what about raffles?
I hate them.
That's a loaded question, Ava.
It is.
I know you have an opinion, and I would love for you. I mean,
Well,
you need to tell us what to do with raffles or
okay,
not to
well,
do.
2 or 3 things. Raffles are controlled by the state of Texas. And so you need to say that you're in compliance with the raffle. Let me back up. Before I do raffles, I knew there was an issue I want to talk about. When you do fundraising activities that might be subject to sales tax, the state of Texas has a 2-day or 3-day, I can't remember which, exemption. And so if you do all the activities that might be subject to sales tax, in other words, a big fundraiser that you might be charging sales tax for, you can get exempt from that sales tax. It's either 2 times or 3 times. I just don't remember. And so just kind of look that up as it relates to exempt sales tax. Okay, now from raffles. Let's go all the way to your 501c3 first. This is your foundation, and you're going to do a raffle with the foundation. Please know that a payment for a raffle to at a 501c3 organization is not a charitable contribution. So when you have, and why it's not a charitable contribution, because it is a game of chance. So if you have your 501c3 that does a raffle and somebody buys 100 tickets and pays $1,000, you say, thank you very much, but that is not a charitable contribution. If you're a 501c3 organization and you have this raffle, if somebody contributes to the organization for this, let's say a silent auction item, if they contribute a non-cash item, then I'm going back and forth, and I apologize because I got so much to talk about. Let me stay with raffles, and then we'll get back to silent auction. Well, let's do silent auction items first. Same issue. If you have a silent auction item or an auction item, the person who donated, this is all to 501c3, to your foundation. The person that donated that can get a deduction. The person that pays for it does not get a charitable deduction because they got value for received. Now, if for some reason they paid more than the fair market value, then, which normally never happens, then they could get a charitable deduction. As a 501c3, you're required to give people notice, keep people a letter for any contribution of over $250. And you're required to do that. Also, you're required, if you give somebody over $75, if somebody pays you $75 or more for a ticket, of which part of it is for meal and part of it is a donation, then you have to let them know what value you have for the value of the goods and services received. You do not tell them your donation is worth X. You do not give tax advice. What you do is you say, thank you very much for your $75 ticket. We estimate the value of the goods and services received for this ticket to be $50.
Got it.
Okay? And so if somebody gives you a
Yeah.
sponsorship,
What
I'm
question?
sorry, real quick, is that one donation, or let's say that they buy 5 tickets and it's more than $75?
that you still do the 5 times 75, and you still have to do, you'd have two things right there. Number one, you
Right.
definitely have a reporting of the $250 because it'd be over it. And number two, you have to show the amount of the non-good. Every time you do a $250 or more contribution, you have to have at the bottom, no goods and services received, or we estimate the value of goods and services to be received to be blank. Perfect example. Let's say that they bought 10 tickets at $75 a piece for a table. They paid $750. Maybe they paid $1,000. Well, we know 250 of that is a contribution. And then the 75, you have to do the calculation as well. And so you can say, thank you very much for your $1,000 contribution. We estimate your value of goods and services received to be $450. You don't ever say that that your donation is 550. You only say that we estimate the value of goods and services to be X.
But it's only if it goes over 75. So if I had, 10 tickets that were $10 each, but it was cumulative $100, would then I have to do the pay $75 or more letter, right? So the tickets were $10 each. I sold 10 of them. Because that's more realistic in our world. I mean, if we're going to.
No, I understand. Well, you would be doing them a favor by letting them know the value of the goods and services received. So you probably would want to hit, that'd be 10 tickets at $10 a piece is $100. I think they use the $75 rule based upon I'm sitting here thinking about the tax return itself and what it says. And to answer your question, I'm going to be guessing
That's fair.
whether you would have to do it. I don't want you to have to do it for every $10 ticket. And they don't want you to have to do it for every $10 ticket. That's the reason why they put it at $75. But if somebody gave you more than $75, you probably need to send them, you say the X amount of your value is for this. But I'll tell you what, I will look that up for you. And if you'll send me an email, I'll be glad to answer that directly. I really don't know the specific answer. So goods and services is important. Not giving tax advice is important. Giving letters to everybody that contributed more than $250 is important, is required. Silent auction items or any auction items are not, the payment of them is called a transaction. And so therefore it is not a charitable deduction. The person that donated the item gets a charitable deduction, but here again, you still do not give them tax advice. You'll say, thank you very much for your 4 stuffed poodles that you gave us. And that's all you have to do is you say that. Thank you very much for the 4 stuffed poodles, or thank you very much for the, the 10 meals at such and such. You don't necessarily give them the fair market value. It's the job of the donor to determine the value of non-cash items donated to a charity. Now back to the raffle. The payment of the raffle is not a charitable deduction. You also have to have on the raffle a statement that's saying this is not a charitable deduction. You cannot raffle and for the raffle, you must have the raffle item in your possession and paid for before you start the raffle. You cannot raffle for prizes for money. But believe it or not, you can raffle and get debit cards. I do not understand the difference, but you can raffle for debit cards or cards at Foley's or whatever like that, you know, good for X amount of purchasing at a particular place. There's, yeah, that's for 501c3s or 501c4s. Obviously, there's no charitable deduction for a 501c4. There are some other rules that you really need to look at the Secretary of State to see if you've been in existence for long enough for them to even have a raffle. And last but not least, I will tell you the way in which to get around a raffle, or at least hopefully get around a raffle. If you have door prizes and everybody gets a ticket when they come in the door and you give away door prizes, that's not a raffle. That's a door prize. Therefore, people that do the raffle, if you give them the opportunity, give everybody the opportunity to get a free ticket. And you wouldn't really do that for a full raffle, but you might do it just for a raffle at a night, an activity just at nighttime, which you have enclosed area, enclosed a group of people. If it's a if there's not a chance, if everybody has the opportunity for a free ticket, it's called a door prize. Just because people contributed additional monies for more opportunities, it's still, you have to give everybody the opportunity to buy a ticket, excuse me, to get a ticket for free. Okay. Please check with the Secretary of State, with the rules and regulations with the raffles. You do not know how many times I go into clubs, fundraisers or whatever, and I have to kind of just turn my head the other way because they're doing things that they probably shouldn't be doing. Okay, what else?
So does it matter just, you know, changing the terminology when you're doing something in like at your club meeting, instead of saying, hey, we're doing a raffle, we're doing a door prize? I mean, it seems, I don't know.
Obviously, yeah. Well, if you're going to say we're going to have the opportunity for you to win this or that, please know that everybody that is, I mean, if you gave a ticket to everybody that came in, then it's already become a door prize.
That makes sense.
I'm just, like I said, I see it all the time. There's rules and regulations. Sometimes you're not even supposed to do raffles because you haven't been in existence long enough and all these other type of stuff. So check with the Secretary of State.
And earlier you were talking about sponsorships versus advertisements. Are both of those considered charitable contributions in a 501c3, or is one a service and one's a contribution? I know you're kind of talking about that.
The sponsorship can be a charitable contribution. That is exactly correct. Now, most of the sponsors are going to try to take it as advertising, even though it's not advertising to you, technically under UBIT. Or they may want to take it as a charitable contribution. Individuals may take it as a charitable contribution. Businesses may want to take it off of their advertising budget. But in either case, as long as the value received by the sponsor is less than 2% of the total value of the amount paid, then it's considered, it can be a contribution. It is not subject to UBIT.
And then as a club, do we consider that income, or how do we consider that?
Oh yeah, you would still consider it income. On the tax return, there's 3 different types of income. There is your donations. There is, well, there's 4, but your donations, there's your exempt function income, and exempt function income is income. You don't really have that, but if you were an educational program and you charge, education is also a 501c3 or can be, and you charged a fee for the seminar, that's a exempt function income. Then you have unrelated business income, that's advertising, for example. And then you have other income that would be subject to income tax, but it's not income tax because of code sections 512, 513, and 514. Examples: interest income to your organization is tax-free. Sale of any stocks and bonds is tax-free. Royalty income, as long as there's not a marketing portion to it, is tax-free. Those are just some examples of tax-free income that normally would be a royalty. In other words, if you're getting a royalty off certain activities, that's regularly carried on. And so therefore that would normally be subject to income tax, but it would be not subject to income tax as long as there's not a marketing portion to it. For example, if you're getting book royalties for some book that was presented, and all you did was just get the royalty, that's tax-free. If you were to market the book and try to sell the book for whoever is doing it, and then you got a royalty, then you're marketing it, and therefore that is subject to income tax. So you want to stay away from marketing because IRS does not want to get, they want everybody on the same playing field. And if you're not paying income taxes and the business is paying income taxes, they're not going to let you compete with that business and be tax-free.
Ellen, do you have a question?
No.
Okay.
I want to thank everybody because it's been very informative for me. Although I've been in nonprofits before, but it's been a very enlightening experience tonight. And thank you for allowing me to sit in.
Ellen, do you have any questions that I might be able to just burning to ask? Since you've been in nonprofits.
No.
Not picking on you, you just have a little green check mark. I'm trying to figure out how that happened. So I didn't know if you had raised something. Any other questions for Ronnie?
So on the sponsorship, does it matter whether they use the business name versus their personal name?
No, business name is okay, no problem. In fact, I'll give you this all came about because of the Cotton Bowl. It's called the Cotton Bowl case. And if you've ever seen the IRS decided they were going to go after all the bowls and all the money that these bowls were raising with this advertising money, and they were going to go get the pay income tax. And the schools that were getting all this money said, "Oh, wait a minute, you can't. We can't do that." So the Cotton Bowl was taken to test, and that's how all of these rules came about. And so the next year at the Cotton Bowl, the AT&T was the sponsor. And so you had AT&T, Southwestern Bell, Ma Bell, whatever, and they had tents, little, what you might call tent marks all around the stadium where the yard lines are. Say Southwestern Bell, Ma Bell, AT&T, whatever it was, because that's all non-advertising money. That's just their name, and that's all they got. And so therefore that portion money received for that would be tax-free. If they did an advertising, what you have to be very careful about is, and you'll do that sometimes with like a program, you may say, okay, we want you to be a sponsor. There'll be a sponsor, and then we're going to give you an ad in our newsletter. We're going to give you an ad in our program. Well, the way in which to do that is you've tainted the whole thing unless you carve it out. And so let's say that you have other ads that are $100 in your little program, but they were $1,000 sponsor, then you would be able to carve out $100 for the ad and $900 for the sponsor, as long as you make sure that you carve it out and you identify that. In a lot of nonprofits, you'll have large sponsorships and they'll give tickets to the event, and they'll give for example, like I said before, if they gave $1,000 sponsorship and then they gave them 10 tickets and they're worth $750, well, that $750 is over the 2%. So the $250 can be a contribution, but their $750 has to be broken down, because that's really not a sponsorship, and it's not a charitable deduction, or even a non-taxable event as well. I will be glad to stay on if you have more questions, or I have on the screen right now is my name, my address, my telephone number, my email address, my website address. So you just give me a call, preferably after June 15th. When I give these presentations in February and March, people will call anyway, and that's okay. But I really like helping you, and I want to make sure that you have the best year that you can have, that all of this is, I know I brought up some questions, but I want you to get the answers to the questions so that you don't have to worry about them, and you can just focus on the programs. I will tell you, I guess the one thing I can tell you that as treasurer, many times you're an accountant as treasurer, and I know that boards are only interested in their program. They're really not interested in the numbers, or they want to make sure. So your treasurer's presentation needs to be distinct. It needs to show that we're within budget. It needs to show that we have money and we can do the programs. And it doesn't need to drag on. I've had treasurers make presentations that took 50 to 75% of the total board meeting. And please, it's not that important. It may be important to you. And I'm a CPA, I could do this, but I know how to read boards. And sometimes people keep making those presentations and they just don't understand. And not just in Rotary, I've got nonprofits that have done the same thing. So they want to know that you can pay your bills, you're operating within budget, and we got money to do things. So that's my last little bit of a suggestion. Also, I guess the other one is, you got a good group of people that are on here. Don't just bounce questions off of me. Bounce them off other people that are on the call. Ask, hey, how do y'all do this? What do y'all do with this? How do you do that? And I think you'll have a good year.
All right, I see Charles has his hand raised.
It would help if I unmuted, probably. Is anyone aware of any club that has put together a handbook for treasurers to use that would include language that you put on a receipt to someone, or generally a set of forms or a set of ideas as to how to be a good treasurer? I'm hearing no one.
It's a great idea.
On the agenda.
I'll take it when you do it.
Charles, when you put that together, yes, that would be fantastic.
I want to piggyback. So Ronnie, to put you on the spot, are you familiar with the training that is offered through the Learning Center for Treasurers? Is that something that content, is that included in that? I will admit I have not attended any of that through the Learning Center.
Well, they're starting to do that in, you're talking about the stuff they did up in Kansas City?
No, the Learning Center through Rotary International.
Mm-hmm.
The Learning Center.
No, I'm not familiar with that.
It's on the website.
Okay. I apologize that I probably need to get up there. I've done the training for the district governors at Zone. I've done the training for president-elects at PETS, and I've done training for treasurers and I'm not familiar with it. I know that they're doing some training. Not Debbie, who am I trying to think of? Edwards, Diane Edwards is doing some stuff as it relates to not training for treasurers, but just all training at the zone level. And so to answer your question, I need to look that up. And after June 15th, I will look it up and see what's involved. And Greg Pod, past district governor, past district governor, but also past vice president of Rotary National, has been very involved in trying to put together a couple of years ago. And I gave him a bunch of information, and that it may have been an offshoot of what he was trying to do to put that learning center type together for treasurers. So that may be what you're talking about. I just have not followed it. Ms. Mason can appreciate when you become a PDG, you kind of go off into the sunset, and you help a little bit wherever you can, but you don't stay as current as you are when you're that true district governor.
Thank you. I appreciate that. Mindy, do you have a question?
Yeah, I have one more question. So the whole raffle thing scares me, first of all. But then let's say that we are cooking dinner and we're selling plates, right, to raise money.
No problem.
No problem, no concerns there, no sales tax issues or anything like that that we have to worry about?
And you're selling tickets for the plate, like a pancake dinner or brisket dinner or stuff like that?
On this case, they just pay for the plate. There's not really a ticket, but let's say that they pay $10 for the plate of food. And that's, the food was donated. So that's a fundraiser.
Well, the donation creates, by it all being donated, it
Yes.
creates an exception to the rules anyway. So if you're getting all donated money, all donated activities. And now when I say donated, the food's donated, but if you have to pay for a rental of the place or stuff like that, then everything's not completely donated. So like I said, there's some exceptions to that, but as it relates to the sales tax, remember you've got 2 or 3 sales tax days that are tax-free, and you don't even have to register for them.
Okay.
I don't think you do.
All right. Thank you.
Anybody else have questions for Ronnie?
What I would be concerned about is if you did that once a month, because then you would be doing it regularly carried on over a period of time.
Okay, that makes sense. Versus like a once or twice a year thing.
You betcha.
Okay, I have a question. I think this is going to be a stupid question. How do I, if I'm on chat and I want to write something, and I do write something, how do I send it?
Hit enter.
You just hit enter. You just hit, enter. Is that what you mean?
On your
Yeah.
keyboard? Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
You want to try it? You want to try it, Ellen?
Yeah,
Okay.
Maybe she did, Ava, and it wasn't to you.
You're
I
right.
send it to everybody, but nothing's happening to it.
Well, now you all are assuming she's on a computer. Are you on your computer? Or are you
Yes,
on your
I am.
device?
I'm on
Okay,
my computer.
all right.
So
But I
Amy is
think-
very technically inclined. She can help you.
Okay,
Yeah, I'm not seeing anything coming through.
I know, because
I'm gonna send you a message and see if you
That's a
can.
good
send it.
idea,
I can read
Demetrius. That's a
everything
very
that's
good
on
idea.
there.
So I think
Okay.
that's a question about the training with RI. Like what Ronnie's doing has been great for bridging the gap. But as far as like what's out there, in my past experience, it's like, okay, you know, treasurer's responsibility is to pay the bills and learn how to use Club Runner. That's pretty much about the extent of it.
So you've done Rotary, you've done the Learning
But,
Center, Kevin?
That was a while ago. So, I mean, I'm sure they probably updated it since then, but I mean, it didn't used to be a whole lot, and it was like trainings like what Ronnie's doing is really what kind of helped bridge the gap for a lot of this.
Well, the main thing is you get interaction with the person that's giving you the information, which is wonderful, wonderful, Ronnie. Thank you so much.
One of the things I did text our incoming governor, Jerry, as this was all going on, and I said, what are your thoughts about us hosting maybe quarterly an opportunity for you all to get together? I know at the beginning, before Ronnie came on, somebody had asked if we had like a Facebook page or a group that you all could join and chat and do those things. And we're happy to set that up for you all as well, and making one or several of you the administrators of that, so that you have those additional opportunities to gather. And know that we can send you a list of everybody that was on this call today, as long as you are open to it with your email, so that you have that as well. And you can feel free to communicate with each other without having to make our district to intervene, because we want you to be able to feel free to talk amongst each other, and then come to us if you need more training or however we can assist you.
I would just say, as a new treasurer, this was very useful. So maybe quarterly or twice a year, because I don't really know what questions to ask at this point, other than, curiosity.
Absolutely. You don't know what you don't know until you have to know it, right? Or you got in trouble for it.
Or
Well,
somebody
Mindy,
asks
that's the reason I've also given you my telephone number, my email. So if you come across something later on, feel free to call me or to email me, and I'll do my best to answer it. I've got, and those of you that wanted the slides, I'll be glad to send it to you if you'll email it to me. And also, I was supposed to answer a question. I've already forgotten what it was. So whoever I was supposed to answer that for, please email me, and I'll do my best to answer it as well.
Ronnie, I just sent you an email, and I said, if you'll send me the slides, I'll send them out to everybody.
Okay, that'll be great.
I'm happy to do that. I just sent you an email.
Okay.
And then that way, we can get some questions and some suggestions back to the training team. That would be fantastic.
All right, everyone. I thank you for your time. And again,
Thank
feel
you,
free
Ronnie, so
to
much.
Thank y'all.
contact
Y'all
us if
take
you have
care.
additional support. All right. You all have a good evening.
thank y'all.
Bye-bye.